Aloha Aina, Ano Ai, Velina Kako. Welcome to Free Hawaii News, brought to you by the Koani Foundation, presenting Hawaiian perspectives on a broad range of topics and issues affecting the Hawaiian Islands, the Pacific, and the world. Your hosts for Free Hawaii News are Leon Kaulahau-Siu, musician, composer, diplomat, and political analyst, and Hinaleimoana Wong, Kumu filmmaker, cultural and Hawaiian language preservationist, and community leader. And now, Free Hawaii News.
Ano ai me ke aloha ia kākoa pauloa e ko Hawaii nei pai aina puni. Mahalo anui a o ko ke kipa ana mai o wau no ke ia o Kumuhina.
Aloha, and my name is Leon Kaulahau-Siu, and we welcome you to this episode of Free Hawaii News.
The Lahaina Community Land Trust was created as a result of the fire in Lahaina, Maui, to protect local lands and the community from outside interests and offshore developers, as the people of Lahaina rebuild from the August 2023 fire. It's been a few months since we've checked in with members of the Lahaina community, so we go now to Lahaina, where Carolyn Auveloa and Autumn Ness of the Lahaina Community Land Trust are standing by. Aloha, Carolyn and Autumn. Mahalo for joining us on Free Hawaii News.
Aloha, Leon. Thank you so much for having us.
Aloha, good to see you again.
How is recovery and rebuilding coming along in Lahaina?
It's coming along pretty great, actually. We really built up some momentum. I believe the county reported 17 homes have had their final inspection. They're complete, and about 255 more are currently under construction. It's a really exciting time in Lahaina to see all this great construction going on.
How many properties does the Lahaina Community Land Trust now have under its protection?
I love this question because it's kind of twofold. When we first started having this conversation about building a community land trust, we thought that we were going to have to buy every property in order to protect it. And we've developed this kind of twofold approach so that, because if you think about it, if you wait till someone has to sell their property to then buy it and protect it, that feels a little wrong. So we found a way that to actually prevent the sale from happening in the first place by filling people's insurance gaps and keeping them home. So in exchange, they agree to putting a kama'aina easement on their property. So they actually get to retain title to their property. They live in their house, and then the agreement is that their land will never be accessible to an investor again, that it'll be owner occupied, and that sometime in the future, the Lahaina Community Land Trust could bring it into their property if and when it ever sells. So right now we have 5 properties that are in community ownership under the Lahaina Community Land Trust. We've got 2 under contract right now. And then with that kama'aina easement program we told you about, we've got our first 3 that are gonna have their foundations poured pretty soon.
Later this summer.
Yeah, and come back home. And then we've got another 10 of those in the pipeline where it's moving forward towards that. And we've got 41 people on a list waiting to get the resources to help them out too.
How do you make your key decisions regarding stewardship of the Aina at the Lahaina Community Land Trust?
Stewardship of Aina, from the get-go is really facilitated by a relationship with this place. And that's the awesome privilege I feel like that the Community Land Trust is holding to hold space for community to be able to come back and re-engage with Aina. We have 3 different pathways or programs under our Community Land Trust. We've set ourselves up to be able to do affordable housing programs. We have an open space for Aina that is sensitive either environmentally or culturally. We can steward that kind of Aina in Lahaina. And we also have a pathway for commercial properties. But our primary focus right now is for affordable housing. And so that's where we're putting majority of our time and energy, mostly because of the post-fire circumstances and it's really the most pressing need for our community right now.
Tell us a story about Auntie Nell.
Auntie Nell is one of the newest forever members of the Lahaina Community Land Trust, Ohana. Her home is Shark Pit area, and was one of the very few structures in that whole neighborhood that was not destroyed in the fire. She has pretty incredible stories about how she learned that her house survived. But she was left feeling like, what do I do with this blessing? And did a bit of research, and then saw in the newspaper the story about our first purchase, which was a family that had relocated after the fire and really felt strongly about their land coming back to the community, and especially under an organization that has like Native Hawaiian stewardship values. So she saw it in the newspaper, and then she did some research about us. And then one day I get a phone call, and she said, I'd like to donate my house to the Lahaina Community Land Trust. And when I started to ask her questions and explain, she was like, no, I've decided already. Please come over so we can get this figured out. And she said that she's lived in a lot of places and worked in a lot of different careers. And she was very clear that Lahaina has been the best 22 years of her life. And I just spoke to her on the phone the other day, and she was talking about what an incredible neighborhood she lives in, and she doesn't want that to change. And she's afraid that when her time here is over, that her house will end up in the hands of somebody who doesn't know and care for this place. And so she will, live in her house, and then when she passes, which hopefully is not soon, a Lahaina family can live in her home.
We know there are a lot of Lahaina Ohana who are rebuilding and concerned that the insurance payouts they've received are not enough to cover the cost of rebuilding, or maybe they didn't have insurance at all. What are their options if they have an insurance gap?
We have our Keep Lahaina Home program. It's essentially an insurance gap program specifically designed for that exact situation. We knew while the fire was still burning that this was going to be a problem. Rebuilding was going to be a challenge for some folks. In my own family, I have a lot of Ohana that are older and they're on a fixed income, and we knew that the rebuild challenge was going to be significant. We started to understand also that, for some folks that didn't update their insurance real recently. We have one family that had just finished a major renovation. They spent their first night in their renovated home. They hadn't had a chance to update their insurance yet. And their insurance, unfortunately, their coverage was so short, especially considering they had just finished this big renovation. So for folks with an insurance gap like that, we've partnered with Ho'ola Akama, the Lahaina Long-Term Recovery Group, as well as Hawaii Community Lending. And together with them, we are working together to bring resources together to fill insurance gaps. We have some funding that the county graciously trusted us with to help these families to fill this gap. It's a grant that we're giving them. We're putting together all these various resources to put together whatever this family's need is, and helping them to bridge that gap and reach the finish line of rebuilding a home that is appropriate for their family, that they can live in, and that the debt that they'll be carrying is also going to be sustainable for their family. And so it's super exciting work, man. Every situation is a little bit different, but we're so grateful that we have this awesome partnership and we're able to bring all these different resources together in order to meet the needs of our community. The average gap is about $400,000. In exchange for that grant that they get that brings down their price to rebuild their home, they commit their home to owner occupancy and to the community if in the future. So they get to still retain title to their property, but they agree to a kama'aina easement on their property. With that kama'aina easement, what it says is, in the event they ever choose to sell in the future, the Lahaina Community Land Trust will have the first opportunity to purchase their home and their land. And if we don't purchase it, then we'll help them find another Lahaina community member to purchase it from them.
You're also now partnering up with organizations like Maui Long-Term Recovery, as well as the Mennonite Disaster Service. Can you tell us what these new partnerships will achieve?
These are some more of the partnerships that I think we're all so proud of, and that just show us how special this community is. When the Lahaina Community Land Trust team started talking about the dangers of just rebuilding a community without long-term protections and how that gentrifies and ends up displacing people long term, it was not hard to get other organizations to jump in. They all like agreed right off the bat, if we're going to rebuild Lahaina, we're going to make sure we're rebuilding it for our people and not investors to move in later. And so the long-term recovery group, Hawaii Community Lending, the Mennonite Disaster Services, everybody agrees we don't want to Habitat for Humanity. We don't want to rebuild houses and then see them on Zillow in 5 years sold for $2 million, you know? Okay, they go into this funnel where all of our partners start evaluating how can we chip away at that gap. Some of it is free Mennonite Disaster Services construction labor. Some of it is a free roof donated by X construction company. Some of it is subsidized lumber. Some of it is a free appliance package. And then by the time it comes out the bottom of the funnel, maybe there's $100,000 left, and that's where we can put cash in. And when all is said and done, between all of our partners, there's $500,000 of support to bring these people home.
The Lahaina Community Land Trust was recently recognized by Global Giving. Can you tell us what Global Giving is and why this recognition is so important?
Global Giving is a really cool organization that leverages its global reach to collect funds and bring them into a lot of different communities. A lot of them are post-disaster, and their whole model is trust-based, community-led, community-live-in philanthropy. And so they actually did quite a bit of research before they reached out to us in Lahaina, talking to other funders and other community leaders, and they really recognized the community-driven, the community-led in Lahaina Community Land Trust. So yeah, they've given us some funding in the very, very beginning. They believed in the dream, they believed in the vision, and they believed in our ability to carry the vision out, which was really, really important. They've been great funding partners, and as you said, they've been highlighting our work and the stories of they highlighted our work, like the nuts and bolts of the work. But I think the more important part of the story is they highlighted why it's important to keep generational families home. They highlighted the connection between generational folks of a place and why they are so much better stewards of our environment and culture and resources than an investor that may move in to replace them. So really grateful that they get it and that they choose their platform to highlight why that's important.
Mahalo nui to Carolyn and Autumn for sharing this vital information on Free Hawaii News.
You're watching Free Hawaii News, giving you the Kanaka perspective on issues in Hawaii.
Ahupua'a is a traditional Hawaiian land division system that began around 1200 AD. An ahupua'a typically extended from Mauka to Makai, or from the mountains to the sea, and each ahupua'a encompassed a variety of resources to support a community, which allowed those communities to be self-sufficient. The guiding principle of the Ahupua'a system is that land, water, and all of nature are interconnected, and therefore they must be managed synergistically and with care. Under this system, the Hawaiian Islands were structured into approximately 725 ahupua'a, each being self-sustaining and extending from Mauka to Makai, or from the mountains to the sea. It was a symbiotic balance of making sure that if we take care of nature, then it will take care of us. The Ahupua'a system remained in place throughout Hawaii until the Great Mahele of 1848. That's when the Kingdom of Hawaii transitioned from a communal land management system to one of private ownership. Today, Ahupua'a do exist on each island, but they are not as prevalent as they once were in pre-contact times. However, there are calls now for the Ahupua'a system to once again become the main system of land management throughout all of Hawaii. To learn more, we have with us today Kili'i Kotupete, who is currently the Aina Momona at Pai Pai o He'eia, at the He'eia Fish Pond in He'eia o Ahu. Mahalo anui ya oe ke kipa ana mai ia mākou.
Mahalo na o ka hau'oli.
Please introduce this understanding, because this is the first time we get to talk about this on this show. Tell us about the Ahupua'a land management system that Hawaii is quite noted for in the Pacific.
For sure. Our Ahupua'a system, people have taken note of it around the world, and so it is world famous. We are happy to say, not in a boastful way, but just so proud of our kupuna. Like you wonderfully introduced, the Ahupua'a system, if I might just put together a few double words, it was a geopolitical, it was social, economic, it was several, and all-encompassing a system that brought together people, land, culture, resources, spirituality, philosophy, all into a system of land management, a system of management that allowed our kupuna to thrive on these islands, not just subsist. This was not a subsistence system. This was a thriving system. We have these amazing ali'i who had the foresight, who had the political will and the governance to enact and bring about a system that brought about bounty and abundance for our Hawaiian communities and helped to manage Yuka Aikai.
Mahalo. Such profound work and thinking on the part of our kupuna of those years. Tell us, how efficient was the Ahupua'a system, and what role do fish ponds play in this system?
Sure. Thank you for asking about Lokoi'a. That is where I happen to work. But just in terms of its efficiency, Ahupua'a, I always want to talk about Lokoi'a. But Ahupua'a were, second to none in honoring truly. It wasn't a system of extraction. It was a system of honoring the elements, honoring our akua, honoring nature in all of its forms and seasons, honoring it to the point that our kupuna were able to huli kalima ilalo, work the aina, work in the kai, and honor those elements that were able to bring about just a wonderful and thriving society. Creating the Ahupua'a system in its efficiency was a holistic and a circular system, really second to none in the world, and especially when it comes to islands. We can think about any place that we live on this globe as an island, and if we behave as such, many of the choices that we make today would be different in all of our different communities around the world. So it was a highly efficient system, one that was based on vai, and vai being wealth, but again, philosophy, religion, arts and crafts, so much, almost everything that our kupuna did centered around wai, and that was the thread that pulled through the Ahupua'a. So you got to be careful, you got to be efficient with your wai. Yes. You don't want to waste it.
And so speaking of vai, speaking of the water systems and water management systems, in your view from where you are in the work that you do, can our traditional system of management, both Ahupua'a level and our management of vai, can these ancient systems be applied to the scale that Hawaii has grown to, not only with population, but also with what has happened in modern Hawaii? And how can you tie this in with the modern calls for us to go back to traditional land tenure and management?
Great question. I think what we need to do today is look to our kipuka, the places around our islands that are showing resilience, that are showing this flexibility with the changing political tides and currents and all the things that are bombarding us in this modern time, social media, laws, politics, funding, just bringing home a paycheck, living in this dare I say, materialistic, capitalistic society that we live today. We just have to look to, I believe, we have to look to the kipuka, the places that are beacons of hope. These would be Aloha stewards. Aloha doesn't necessarily mean just dirt under your fingernails, although that's a big part. We need to feed ourselves. So looking to our farmers, looking to our fishers, looking to our kia'i loko. These are all people and the spaces that they are bringing about restoring abundance. They're happening. They're beacons. They're flashing. They're growing. In order for the Ahupua'a system to make a comeback with those calls, and those are very well-founded calls, because our kupuna lived, like I said, in abundance and in harmony with each other and the elements. We need that today. Being able to tie together these kipuka, these individuals, these organizations, these spaces, these ceremonies that are being conducted, we have to work really hard to bring those together, because the Ahupua'a was about interdependence, holistic and circular motion, circular relationships. And in today's society, I think there are a lot of forces that work against us to keep us separated. So I think a lot is being done. There's a lot of forward movement and progression in our lahui. So bringing together our Aina stewards, our religious leaders, our philosophical leaders, our scientists, our engineers, our Kanaka politicians. Everyone has a place to play and has a part in this this beautiful hula, this beautiful flow of vai in our modern day society. Everyone has a part to play. The Ahupua'a is an amazing model, and we have to. That's how I'll just answer that question with: we have to, we must.
What would you say some of the modern day issues that are prevalent in and around us today? What are these issues that would be resolved by traditional land tenure and management?
Hard mountain to climb or hard pohaku to move, but not immovable. For example, when it comes to natural resources, the Ahupua'a were typically put in charge of, a konohiki was put in charge of a particular Ahupua'a, and the residents worked with the konohiki to manage their natural resources. And it wasn't a system of serfdom or where they had to stay. If your konohiki wasn't taking care of you and your aina was not flourishing, you had the ability to move. But the konohiki worked along with the residents to bring about abundance. Make sure the water is clean on its way down. Grow your lo'i, or grow your kalo in your lo'i. Feed your mala, nutrify the waters, bring them down to the local i'a, grow i'a in the different variety of local that our kupuna generated, devised, and having healthy fisheries. Iuka aikai. Today, our system of natural resource management has taken steps, in our state government, has taken steps, but there's still a lot of work that could be done. Our kupuna walked in a way, talked in a way, thought in a way to ensure that their water was clean and flowing and abundant for all of their communities, and we need to make decisions and carry ourselves with the same pono today.
You know, Hina, I was recently in Fiji.
Yes.
And I went there for a big celebration. It was the dedication of an older college that has now turned into a university. Pacifica Communities University. And the wonderful thing about that was being among people from all over the Pacific came. It was almost like FestPac.
Is that
on a
USP?
smaller scale.
Is that the
no,
USP?
No, it's not USP. It's another one, but in Suva as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But anyway, so what was really wonderful about it was, again, the protocols. When you have all the different people come in, you know, it just, again, was such an example of the Pacific way. You know, the thing that I know that here in Hawaii, of course, when we had FestPac, we took the time, you know, they went like 4 hours over, right? That opening night, it was about 4 hours over the time limit that had been allotted. But that's what you do. You take the time, and you be with each other, and you honor one another.
Yes.
And so this was that way too. And so it started out with the ceremony, and they had a ali'i there, they were honoring her, and she had come to bless the whole event. But then, of course, the people of that area, that land, and and it was really wonderful because in most westernized type of things, when they honor somebody, they mention the person, they give them a gift, or they basically say something, and then they move on to the program. But not this.
No.
It took about 3 hours.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it was great because everybody just honored that. Nobody got impatient or when it's just going to end or things like that. Because you do what you have to do, and people need to be honored, and people need to be respected.
Yes.
And so this was a really wonderful reminder of where we need to be going as Hawaii.
My greatest lament is that the beautiful moments that really deserve to be enjoyed, savored, and honored, especially when it comes to ceremony and protocol. Now, there's an opposite side to having extended or lengthy ceremony and protocol, and sometimes it gets really long. But there's also much to be said for honoring the auspiciousness of the moment, honoring the majesty of someone's oratory, honoring what's going on in the elements around you. These experiences culminate in our relationship with one another and our relationship to our space and place and relationship to time. And it is something that both of us are quite familiar with, having our experiences in the Pacific, that in the larger Pacific, time doesn't seem to exist. And of course, sometimes, when we laugh and joke, we say Pacific time. What time are we starting? We're starting on Pacific time. But sometimes that's how it's meant to be, isn't it? And Hawaii increasingly moves away from this because we are always required to think about time and money. And it's often said, time is money. And so everything is always shortened, cut short, truncated. And sometimes when we cut too much, we actually remove ourselves from the dignity, the honor, and the auspiciousness that might just take a little bit longer for everyone, not only to procure out of that experience and to be in the moment. We lose being in the moment and being amongst other people because we have to hurry. And so I just want to encourage people in this little segment of ours today where we're talking about Pacific Way and you mentioning about the honoring of people. And we saw it again in Festback. We saw it where we went way longer. But that was great because everyone deserved to have their rightful time. It was one of the greatest and largest family gatherings. The Pacific family, the family of the Moana Nui. The Royal Mausoleum at Mauna Ala, which is the final resting place for many of Hawaii's royalty, continues to be in the news. This 3.5-acre site in Nu'uanu, here in Honolulu, is home to more than 50 ali'i Hawaii and trusted advisors. It is the family burial plot of the Kamehameha and Kalakaua dynasties, as well as many ancient and prominent chiefs, mo'i, or kings, from across the Pai'aina. For more than 100 years, the lineal descendants of the High Chief Ho'olulu, a trusted advisor to Kamehameha I, served as caretakers or kahu for Mauna Ala Royal Mausoleum. Last year, that changed with the appointment of a non-lineal descendant, which caused considerable controversy. Over the last few months, Free Hawaii News has interviewed those who have insight into the history of Mauna Ala, as well as being a possible successor as a kahu to Mauna Ala. We are pleased to have with us Haila Mafardin, who is the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, Senior Director of Hawaiian Cultural Affairs. Hailame is a graduate of Kamehameha Schools and was a community strategist of Hawaiian ethos, as well as a Hawaiian language instructor at Kamehameha Schools before joining OHA. He is also a former president of the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs. Hailama is an esteemed Hawaiian culture expert and historian. In 2018, he was designated a living treasure of Hawaii by the Honpa Hongwanji Mission of Hawaii. Mahalo anui ke kipa ana mai. Hau oli no imakwe ko kipa mai ya oe. Please, if you would, Kahu, please share with us what is the importance of the Royal Mausoleum, that place which we know as Mauna Ala?
I think most everyone understands how imperative it is to keep Mauna Ala on our focus, our radars. I don't think there's a person who disagrees that Mauna Ala is sacred, that it might be a wahi kupuna, wahi kapu, wahi pana, that which people call a treasured place. And yet, it should never be a place of dispute in the means that, in some way, it's turning out a place where we are fighting over the bones of our ali'i. That I was taught by great elders like Entihelani Doan and others who lived in the time of Prince Kuhio, walked with Prince Kuhio as a little girl, she and her sister, little girls, but also understood from the elders that we learned that places like these are worthy of protecting. And there are many stories that they spoke of Mauna Ala's, not just value or importance, but the love that we have for Mauna Ala. And so, to answer your question, it is a place where we must be engaged, and everyone must know. And we're all kind of learning together. There are things that even I learned in the last year that are worthy of remembering and teaching and sharing.
Last year in May, the Department of Land and Natural Resources announced that it was breaking a long-time tradition of selecting a kahu for Mauna Ala, who was not a lineal descendant of the High Chief line of Ho'olulu and also of the Kaihe'ekai family. This was a practice that was done for many years. Do you feel that their decision was proper?
Well, that's a loaded question. There's different parts, and if you don't mind, I'll bifurcate the question. First of all, I don't remember the DLNR saying that they're breaking from the tradition, but the behavior was breaking from a tradition. Donnie Chong is not the first non-Ho'olulu descendant. Anti'io Laniluahine was there. The kahu before her, who was Auntie Namahana's mother. There was Her Royal Highness Princess Po'omaikelani. And I don't think we have enough information of all the kahu during the kingdom, whether they all were descendants or not. It's never to negate the value of having folks who have a tradition like this. That is not the case. But I would be firm to say just because you are a Ho'olulu descendant does not make you worthy of being a kahu.
What do you think should be the quality and the qualifying factors for one such person to be a curator, or even perhaps if you want to expand and talk about that title of kahu, because they're almost they exist in two different spaces. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah,
do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah. So our kupuna would say, you don't step in there unless you have kuleana to be there. Now it's not, I don't have the knowledge to know. I know Donnie, and she's very kind. And I've never asked her genealogical ties. Mm-hmm. So it's not my kuleana. And that's something that I learned from our kupuna. We cannot go just shoot out our mouth about other people's genealogy if you don't know. Mm-hmm. And it's not a thing you did publicly. Today we live in a life where people shoot everything on social media. And if I can, yes, I know we have the right to do this, but having the right to do something, and you want to admonish anybody for not being Hawaiian or being Hawaiian, I'll be very firm to say, shooting your mouth out on social media is not Hawaiian. It is not. Writing a letter, perhaps, composing a mele, being there and standing firmly outside of an office, very Hawaiian. But throwing things out and encouraging this discussion like that is very divisive and very Western. You know, kaula'iwi comes to mind. Kaula'iwi can be two sides. The bragged part where you're saying, I'm so-and-so, I'm so-and-so, I'm so-and-so. And we see that happening too. People bragging, I am this, I am this. We all know, I mean, our kupuna taught us, all you people who say, I am, you not. That's what our kupuna taught us. The person who is saying, I am this, is not. We forgot these lessons. We forgot these lessons taught by our kupuna. I was lucky to be raised by my grandparents. And I was reprimanded a lot for, this is where your kuleana is. You don't have, my grandmother used to call it, he-o. He-o.
He-o.
You know? But again, and I gotta appreciate this part of it. I'm gonna talk to you two sides. The other side is, well, some people say, I'm tired of it, so what do I do? Our people were civically engaged. We really were. Kuhio brought that back for us. We taught us. But again, we should be able to discern what is good behavior as Hawaiians. And you carry yourself with a dignity while you fight. It doesn't say we cannot fight. But throwing things on social media where they're permanent forever, and sometimes making ill comments about another, disparaging somebody's genealogy, you have no right. You have no right to do that. So, I mean, I have issue with that kind of stuff. The one thing too that I will say though, is that sometimes there's a way to lift up. So for example, we're talking about, I know better. I know better. It's not my kuleana to become the kahu. I would love to be the kahu of Mauna, but it's not my kuleana, so I'm not going to run for that. I know that. It's not for me to say, Hina, you don't have the kuleana, don't you run for it. You lift up the people who do. And this is the biggest issue I have. And I can work peaceably with DLNR, and I can say your approach to the selection of the kahu of Mauna Ala was incorrect. If they had to do it again, I believe it's going to be different because it caused a big hoopla. So that is the biggest error right there, is that they did not include the traditional groups that were included before. When the answer that came from DLNR was that we followed the exact same process that was done for the previous selection. And I said, that's not true, because I was engaged in the last selection. Asked by them to write a letter of support. And then we got our hui together to say, would we endorse this person? Okay, so that's one part of it. The other part of it is, if you engage in the same process, then why was the result different? Meaning, according to your hiring, you're hiring a curator, a kahu. That's what was on the paper. But then when you hired, you said, this person is not taking on the title of kahu. That Mauna Ala is a sovereign nation is not because of the Article 28, the Joint Resolution 28 that was acted in 1900. And it is said, although I haven't been able to confirm, that our Queen and Robert Wilcox, who was delegate at that time, went to Congress and testified in support of it. The sovereign part of this is not decided by the United States Congress. That Article 28 does not make it sovereign. I tell you what makes it sovereign is our self-determination. What we declare as a people to be sovereign is sovereign. And if only we could unify, whether you agree with me or what, whether we could identify these sacred places to say, this is sovereign. We don't need the United States to tell us, oh, we're going to declare this a piece of sovereign land. Self-determination, we collectively say so. I mean, it's wise, it's the wisdom of our people. Take upon yourself the responsibility you have, and take the time to learn. Let none of us feel that we are so great that we don't have to go to continue to learn. Who would be so unwise as to deny wisdom? For it is a pathway well traveled by our ancestors. And so I don't care what, as long as your eyes open and then you go sleep and you wake up again, keep learning. I'm always willing to learn more, and we should all So mahalo nui lo ia Okua Paulo, mahalo ia Oe,
Mahalo.
mahalo ia Ehu, mahalo ia Leon, a kaka kohana mai.
O ia. Mahalo nui ia oe e kahu hailama. Mahalo.
At the end of this month, I will be at the UN headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, to participate in the 59th session of the Human Rights Council. I will be there to continue informing the Council about the egregious human rights violations against the Hawaiian people resulting from the prolonged illegal occupation of the Hawaiian Islands by the United States. There are 5 items that we are urging the members of the Human Rights Council and other members of the United Nations to act upon. Item 1, to urge the United Nations General Assembly to conduct a review of the adoption of its Resolution 1469, by which the UN became complicit in the United States' 1959 Hawaii statehood fraud. Item 2, to call for a stop to the state of Hawaii's ongoing taking and selling of lands that were registered and secured under the laws of the Hawaiian Kingdom. These include private, ancestral, legacy, public, government, and all other lands and territorial waters in the Hawaiian archipelago. Item 3, to call for a stop to the state of Hawaii's arbitrary detention, incarceration, fining, property seizure, and other forms of discriminatory persecution and harassment directed at Hawaiian nationals living in the Hawaiian Islands. Item 4, to strongly object to the United States' hyper-militarization of Hawaii, which makes the island of Oahu and its 1 million people the target of nuclear annihilation by enemies of the United States. And item 5, to question the United States at its upcoming Universal Periodic Review to account for the numerous human rights violations against the people of the Hawaiian Islands. Those are the 5 items being pursued at the UN. I'd like to spend a little more time on item 5 regarding the Universal Periodic Review, the UPR for short. This is when the Human Rights Council conducts a formal review of the human rights policies and record of each of the members of the United Nations. It takes about 5 years to get to each of the 193 member states of the United Nations. We are now in the Council's 5th cycle of the UPR. The reviews take place at special meetings of the Human Rights Council in Geneva. I have attended each one of the 4 previous U.S. reviews, and this fall I'll be attending the 5th UPR of the United States of America. Concerned parties can file statements and queries to be taken into account by those conducting the review. As we have done before, the Koani Foundation and Keaupuni Hawaii have jointly filed a shadow report with the UN Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights, or OHCHR, for the 5th Universal Periodic Review of the United States of America. The OHCHR confirmed that our report was received and accepted. Here are excerpts from that shadow report. It's titled, "The Shadow Report of the Koani Foundation and Keaupuni Hawaii to the UN Human Rights Council is for the 5th cycle of the Universal Periodic Review of the United States of America, concerning the human rights situation in the Hawaiian Islands." The executive summary says, the Koani Foundation, a Hawaii NGO, calls to the attention of the UN Human Rights Council the ongoing flagrant violations of human rights of the people of the Hawaiian Islands by the United States of America. These flagrant human rights violations are the direct result of the prolonged illegal occupation of the Hawaiian Islands by the United States of America. The human rights situation in Hawaii is an international wrongdoing and therefore demands the intervention of the Human Rights Council and all other relevant organs of the United Nations, including its member states. In 1898, under cover of the Spanish-American War, without treaty of annexation, the United States unilaterally declared the Hawaiian Islands annexed and proceeded to reduce the Hawaiian Kingdom from a sovereign state into a captured U.S. territory. After a vigorous and intense indoctrination and denationalization program, the U.S. arbitrarily and unlawfully converted Hawaiians into U.S. citizens. Then, in 1959, conducted a fake plebiscite which misled the United Nations into accepting the U.S. claim that the Hawaiian people had consented for Hawaii to become a state of the United States. Because the United States' very presence in the Hawaiian Islands is patently unlawful, its operations in Hawaii, in collusion with many other foreign nations, constitutes a multinational criminal enterprise with egregious human rights violations against the Hawaiian people. It is important to note that the 1893 seizure of the Hawaiian Islands by the U.S. set the pattern for the past 132 years of U.S. foreign policy of fomenting regime change, starting civil wars, economic exploitation, displacement of populations, and gross human rights violations all over the world. Our shadow report expounds on the United States human rights violations in Hawaii and ends with 3 questions directed to the United States. Question number 1. In light of the historical facts underlying the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom to which the U.S. admits, and the current status of the Hawaiian peoples as wards of the state of Hawaii, and in light of Article 1 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, how does the U.S. intend to rectify the violations of the human rights of Hawaiian nationals, specifically their right to self-determination? Question number 2. In light of the legal admissions of the U.S. Congress in the Apology Law, the U.S. Public Law 103-150, and the loss of 1.8 million acres of Hawaiian lands, territories, and resources, along with submerged lands and energy and marine resources, how does the U.S. plan to restore land and natural resources to the Hawaiian people and to ensure their subsistence rights, development rights, and their right to freely dispose of or conserve their natural wealth? And question number 3. How does the U.S. intend to harmonize its national security policies with the Hawaiian people's right to self-determination within the provisions of Article 1 of the ICCPR and the right to peace and safety? In the past, the U.S. has chosen to ignore our submissions, but the benefit of filing these reports and statements 6 months in advance of the UPR is that other members of the United Nations get to read our reports and find questions to ask the United States at the U.S.'s review. This has happened in each of the previous 4 review cycles. So we expect this again to happen in the 5th cycle. Mahalo for listening to my UN report on this episode of Free Hawaii News.
Next on Free Hawaii News, Kumu Hinaʻs mana'o.
Mahalo anu ia ʻoukou ke kipa ana mai I keia hapa no hoʻi o ka mākou papahana o ia hoʻi o Kumu Hinaʻs mana'o. I get to share with you a little about a recent announcement that the book Kapai Mahu, which was based off of the animated short film that I am honored and privileged to be associated with. Our work on the project included a full and complete museum exhibit at the Bishop Museum. It included an animated short film. It also included a 1-hour documentary film. And it also included not only a book, but online opportunity for people to visit us as well. And in American news recently, the book Paimahu, the young reader book, was noted as one of the top books to to read for Pacific Islander Pacific Heritage Month. And well, you can all check out my social media for this. But when I think about my thoughts and my sentiments about this, I'm extremely honored that my book was put out there. When I say my book, that's my personal connect with it. I also do share and recognize my two colleagues, Dr. Dean Hamer and Joe Wilson, for without our collective effort, any and all of that work would have been incomplete at some point. So, shout out to all of you. Shout out to both of you, Dean and Joe. Mahalo. When I think about the story Kapai Mahu being brought to you, knowing that this isn't an original story, but simply a retelling through the lens that is our Kapai Mahu team. And I'm extremely honored that the book begets the question, it begets the discussion of identity and what does identity look like in the Pacific. When I think about Mahu, I think about a word that was used to hurt me. And it was a word that was weaponized and used against someone like me and others like me. And it took me a very long time to learn about the scope of this word, the depth and the breadth of this word beyond the trappings of Western perspective attached onto this word. And this word is clearly rooted to a Kanaka and a larger Pacific perspective, because it's not only in Hawaii that we understand this term. In Tahiti and in Nukuhiva, in the Society Islands and islands further down south, there is an understanding also of this term Mahu. And when we look at the place of what is considered Mahu, we know that Mahu hold a space between Kane and Wahine, between male and female. And the recordations of this term rely solely upon limited understanding and limited perspective, because one, the people who recorded, even despite, in the case of our Loea, ku Mary Kavena Pukui, even in her infinite wisdom, she did not necessarily provide a full elaboration on the term Mahu. She did provide the physicality part, of which we also see in dictionary reference in the Lauren Andrews 1840 dictionary. We see references to the term Mahu, but it's always talking about the physical. And what people don't talk about and don't always understand is that when it comes to who we are as a people, whether Kane, Wahine, or Mahu, there is an internal balance that is required of us, and the balance of Kane and Wahine in everyone is what makes us solid Kanaka. And so when someone like myself, who may be considered or looked at as Mahu, I no longer have to look at Mahu through the lens of Western stereotype and also expectation and also scrutiny. I get to look at Mahu from beyond the physical. I get to look at Mahu from the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual perspective, where me and who I am and others like me actually have elements of duality that go far beyond the constraints of Western construct of identity. In fact, in Western society, identity is predicated upon sex and gender. In Pacific Island society, Hawaii and elsewhere, our identity is based on genealogy and land and our connection to whom we descend from and our families whom we come from, and also the land that we hail from. That's our identity coming from the Pacific. And when it comes to acceptance of somebody like me, whether you come from the Kane towards Wahine or Wahine towards the Kane, acceptance comes from knowing kulana and kuleana, knowing your role and responsibility. So for all those of you out there tuning in to this episode of Kumu Hina's Mana'o, I'm extremely thankful for the work that was being done on this particular last project that was highlighted in 2020 and highlighted until now, Kapai Mahu. The young reader, I'm quite honored that it was selected to be uplifted in the Pacific Island Heritage Month. And I can only say that there's so much more to understanding the concept of Mahu. In the case of the 4 healers that came from Kahiki, they were exceptionally powerful healers because of the duality of mana, of Kane and Wahine that they walked with, and their amazing ability to heal. So for any and all of you Mahu out there, and for those who know and are connected to Mahu, of which I'm sure that means there's a lot of you, look at the potential in any one of the folks that you know as Mahu, and your own potential. Know that it's our duality that makes us special. It is who we are that makes us unique, and it's our ability to harness that which comes from the Kane and that which comes from the Wahine to make us stronger, whole, and sometimes even more talented, even more capable, and even more full of capacity and potential. That is my thought for you on Kumu Hina's Mana'o. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui for joining us for this episode of Free Hawaii News. We want to thank you as a viewer, and we want to thank all of our guests for sharing their mana'o with us.
No leila e kia nei na oko e kipa mai nei, mahalo anui ke hui ana, a hui ho kako, aloha.
We hope you enjoyed this month's episode of Free Hawaii News. Mahalo for watching. There's a new show every month, so this program will air several more times this month. You can view it anytime on Olelo's on-demand site or on YouTube. See you next time. Ahui ho, aloha aina.
Free Hawaii Broadcasting Network.